Hello everyone, welcome to my channel SW Metro official channel.
Meri Brown takes a stand against Kody's hidden manipulations. Meri Brown has emerged as a powerful voice against the covert manipulations of her estranged husband, Kody Brown. For years, fans watched as Meri endured emotional neglect, public humiliation, and psychological games at the hands of the man she once loved. However, in a stunning turn of events, Meri has finally taken a stand, refusing to remain a pawn in Kody's twisted power plays. Her journey from a silenced, sidelined wife to a woman reclaiming her agency is nothing short of inspiring, and it's about time. Kody's manipulations have been subtle yet devastating. From gaslighting Meri about their failed reconciliation to outright dismissing her feelings in favor of his favorite wife, Robyn, Kody has weaponized emotional neglect to keep Meri in a state of perpetual uncertainty. One of the most glaring examples was the infamous catfishing scandal, where Meri, lonely and emotionally abandoned, fell victim to an online predator. Instead of offering support, Kody used the incident to further alienate her, painting her as the villain while ignoring his own role in creating the emotional void that led her there. For years, Meri internalized the blame, believing she was the problem, but no more. The final straw came when Kody outright declared that he no longer considered himself married to Meri, despite her years of loyalty. Even then, Meri clung to hope, attending family events, supporting the other wives, and maintaining a facade of unity. But behind the scenes, Kody's dismissive behavior and Robyn's performative sympathy only reinforced the toxic dynamic. Fans watched in frustration as Meri was reduced to a background character in her own life, always waiting for scraps of Kody's attention. Then, something shifted. Whether it was therapy, self-reflection, or simply reaching her breaking point, Meri began setting boundaries. She stopped begging for Kody's approval and instead focused on her own growth, expanding her business, nurturing friendships, and rebuilding her self-worth. In a pivotal moment during Sister Wives' one-on-one specials, Meri openly called out Kody's hypocrisy, pointing out how he demanded loyalty while offering none in return. Her calm yet firm demeanor was a stark contrast to Kody's defensive outbursts, proving that she was no longer under his control. What makes Meri's stand so powerful is the quiet strength behind it. She didn't engage in dramatic confrontations or petty revenge. Instead, she simply walked away from the toxicity. By refusing to play Kody's games, she stripped him of his power over her. Social media erupted in support, with fans praising her for finally choosing herself. Even Christine and Janelle, who had their own struggles with Kody, subtly acknowledged Meri's courage in breaking free from his emotional grip. Kody, meanwhile, has struggled to adapt to this new reality. His ego thrives on control, and Meri's independence threatens that. In recent interviews, he has flip-flopped between feigned indifference and passive-aggressive jabs, revealing his discomfort with Meri's defiance. Robyn, often seen as Kody's enabler, has also seemed uneasy, realizing that the family narrative she helped craft is crumbling. Meri's journey is a masterclass in reclaiming one's power after years of manipulation. She may not have left the legal or spiritual marriage as explosively as Christine did, but her emotional departure is just as significant. By refusing to be Kody's emotional punching bag any longer, she has set an example for anyone trapped in a toxic relationship. Sometimes, the loudest statement is walking away in silence. As Sister Wives continues to unravel, one thing is clear: Kody's reign of manipulation is weakening, and the women he took for granted are done playing by his rules. Meri Brown's stand isn't just about her, it's a victory for every person who has ever been made to feel small by someone who claimed to love them. And for that, she deserves all the applause. Meri Brown's journey toward reclaiming her power in the face of Kody Brown's hidden manipulations. For years, fans watched as Meri, the first wife in the plural marriage, struggled with feelings of isolation, rejection, and emotional neglect, all while Kody's favoritism toward Robyn Brown became increasingly apparent. Yet, in a stunning turn of events, Meri has finally begun to push back against the gaslighting, emotional control, and dismissive behavior that have long defined her place in the family. This shift didn't happen overnight. It was the culmination of years of silent suffering, self-reflection, and, ultimately, the realization that she deserved better. Now, as she steps into her own strength, Meri's defiance against Kody's psychological games marks a pivotal moment not just for her, but for the entire Brown family dynamic. From the early seasons of Sister Wives, Meri was often portrayed as the more reserved, sometimes emotionally volatile wife, struggling to find her footing in a marriage that seemed to leave her behind. Kody's distancing began subtly, less time spent with her, fewer displays of affection, and an increasing focus on Robin, his fourth wife. But what made Meri's situation particularly painful was the way Kody framed their struggles as entirely her fault. He weaponized her past mistakes, such as the infamous catfishing scandal, to justify his emotional withdrawal, painting her as difficult, needy, or even untrustworthy. Meanwhile, he rarely took accountability for his own role in their fractured relationship. This pattern of blame-shifting is a classic manipulation tactic, one that left Meri questioning her own worth and reality. For a long time, Meri internalized these criticisms, often appearing to walk on eggshells in family discussions, hesitant to voice her needs for fear of being labeled as problematic. Kody's habit of shutting her down in conversations, whether in private or in front of the other wives, reinforced her sense of powerlessness. Even when she attempted to reconnect with him, his responses were lukewarm at best, dismissive at worst. In one particularly telling moment during a therapy session, Kody outright stated that he no longer considered himself married to Meri, yet he expected her to remain loyal to the family structure without offering her any real emotional support. This emotional neglect, paired with his refusal to formally end their marriage, kept Meri in a state of limbo, a purgatory of hope and heartbreak. What makes Kody's manipulations so insidious is their subtlety. Unlike overt abuse, his tactics were often cloaked in spiritual language, appeals to family unity, or claims of righteous leadership. He framed his favoritism toward Robin as a natural consequence of her obedience and positivity, while implying that Meri's struggles were the result of her own negativity. This created a dynamic where Meri was made to feel that if she just tried harder, if she just complained less, maybe Kody would love her again. But no matter how much she bent, the goalposts always moved. This is textbook emotional manipulation, keeping someone striving for approval that will never come, ensuring their dependence on the manipulator's fleeting validation. The turning point came when Meri began to recognize these patterns for what they were. Whether through therapy, self-help resources, or the support of friends and fans, she slowly started to question Kody's narrative. She realized that her loneliness wasn't a personal failing but the result of systemic exclusion. She saw that Kody's claims of wanting reconciliation were hollow, given his unwillingness to put in the work. And most importantly, she understood that staying in a one-sided marriage wasn't faithfulness, it was self-abandonment. Her decision to leave the family home in Flagstaff was symbolic of this awakening. While she framed it as a practical choice, her rental lease was up, and she wanted to be closer to her business. The underlying message was clear: Meri was no longer waiting around for scraps of Kody's attention. She was building a life on her own terms. This move infuriated Kody, who seemed to expect her to remain in a holding pattern indefinitely. His reaction, a mix of confusion and irritation, revealed just how much he had taken her compliance for granted. But Meri wasn't done. In recent seasons, she has become increasingly vocal about calling out Kody's hypocrisy. Whether addressing his double standards in how he treats his wives or pointing out his lack of effort in their relationship, she has stopped softening her words to spare his ego. In one memorable scene, she called him out for expecting loyalty while offering none in return, a moment that left Kody visibly flustered. Why? Because manipulators rely on their victims' silence. When Meri started speaking up, she disrupted the entire power dynamic. Of course, Kody's supporters, and even some fans, have accused Meri of being bitter or dragging out the inevitable. But this criticism misses the point. Meri's journey isn't about punishing Kody, it's about reclaiming her dignity. For years, she was the family scapegoat, the one blamed for everything from marital discord to financial strain. Now, she's refusing to play that role any longer. Where does this leave the Browns? In turmoil, frankly. Kody's control over the family has always depended on the wife's willingness to accept his narrative. With Christine leaving, Janelle asserting her independence, and Meri no longer pandering to him, his authority is crumbling. Robin, once the golden wife, now finds herself in an awkward position as the last woman standing in Kody's shrinking empire. Meanwhile, Meri's defiance has inspired fans who see their own struggles with toxic relationships reflected in her story. Ultimately, Meri's stand against Kody's manipulations is about more than just their marriage, it's a lesson in self-worth. For anyone who has ever been gaslit, guilt-tripped, or made to feel like they were too much, her story is a reminder: you don't have to beg for love. You don't have to shrink yourself to fit someone else's expectations. And when you finally walk away from the games, you might just find that the real prize was your freedom all along. Meri was often portrayed as the difficult wife, a narrative that Kody and even some of her sister wives subtly reinforced. Whether it was her struggles with fertility, her desire for equal treatment, or her emotional reactions to Kody's favoritism, Meri was frequently painted as overly sensitive or demanding. However, as the show progressed, it became increasingly clear that Meri wasn't the problem, she was the victim of Kody's emotional neglect and psychological games. One of the most glaring examples was the infamous catfishing scandal, where Meri, lonely and starved for affection, fell prey to an online predator. Instead of offering support, Kody used the situation to further alienate her, weaponizing her vulnerability to justify his emotional withdrawal. His dismissive attitude, claiming he had no desire to repair their marriage, was a brutal blow, yet Meri stayed, hoping for reconciliation. Kody's gaslighting and emotional manipulation. Kody's manipulations were often subtle but devastating. He would dangle the possibility of reconciliation, only to pull away when Meri expressed hope. In one particularly painful scene, Kody admitted he no longer considered himself married to Meri, yet expected her to remain loyal to the family. This emotional whiplash, keeping her tethered while refusing to commit, was classic manipulation. Even more insidious was his habit of rewriting history, portraying himself as the wounded party while downplaying Meri's sacrifices. When she tearfully confessed her loneliness, Kody coldly responded that she was free to leave, a dismissive remark that revealed his true indifference. Meanwhile, he lavished attention on Robin, his favorite wife, leaving Meri, and others like Christine and Janelle, feeling like afterthoughts. The final breaking point. The cracks in Meri's patience finally became irreparable during the family's struggles in Flagstaff. As Kody's favoritism toward Robin grew more blatant, culminating in his refusal to follow COVID-19 protocols to spend time with Meri, she began to see the truth: she was no longer a priority. The final straw came when Kody outright stated in a tell-all interview that he and Meri were no longer spiritually married, yet still expected her to remain in the family structure. For Meri, this was the ultimate betrayal, a confirmation that Kody had been stringing her along for years while emotionally abandoning her. Meri's empowerment and reclaiming her voice. But Meri's story didn't end in defeat. In a powerful shift, she began asserting her worth. Through social media, she dropped hints about her growing independence, posting messages about self-love and resilience. Then, in early 2023, she made it official: she and Kody were permanently separated. No longer would she allow herself to be the backup wife, waiting for scraps of affection. Fans rejoiced as Meri embraced her new life, focusing on her business, LuLaRoe, and her bed and breakfast, the Lizzie's Heritage Inn. She traveled, reconnected with friends, and even hinted at the possibility of new love. Most importantly, she stopped apologizing for taking up space. Why Meri's stand matters. Meri's journey resonates because it's a story of quiet resilience turning into roaring empowerment. For years, she was the scapegoat, the problem wife, when in reality, she was a woman trapped in a loveless marriage, conditioned to believe she wasn't enough. Her decision to walk away wasn't just about leaving Kody, it was about rejecting the narrative that she deserved less. In a culture that often pressures women to endure mistreatment for the sake of family or loyalty, Meri's defiance is revolutionary. The aftermath and fan reactions. Viewers have overwhelmingly supported Meri's decision, flooding her social media with messages of encouragement. Many have pointed out the double standards in how Kody treated her versus Robin, highlighting the unfairness of his expectations. Others have praised her for showing that it's never too late to choose yourself. Meanwhile, Kody's reputation has taken a hit, with fans accusing him of emotional abuse and hypocrisy. Conclusion: Meri's legacy of strength. Meri Brown's story isn't just a sister-wives subplot, it's a masterclass in reclaiming power after years of manipulation. By finally standing up to Kody, she didn't just